everyone. Thank you for joining the call today. My name is Phil Giorgiani. I'm the Senior Manager of Supplier Diversity at the National Gay and Lesbian Chamber of Commerce. Today we're going to discuss building and sustaining new relationships. I know a lot of you have made some great connections at our Business and Leadership Conference in Vegas, and we're going to talk today about how those relationships can be deepened and extended and hopefully brought into fruition into new contracts and customers. Joining me today is David Ricciardi, the president of Certified LGBTBE Proximo Consulting. He's also the Supplier Diversity Chair of the NGLCC NY, and he's going to talk a little bit about strategy from the supplier perspective. We're also joined by Margaret Clinsport, who's the Director of Supplier Diversity and Sustainability for NGLCC Corporate Partner Allstate. She's going to talk about the subject from the corporate perspective. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Margaret to give her insight.
Okay, I wanted to make a couple points and then really tie it into the business relationship that David and I have been trying to build, because David and I have been trying to work together for a few years, and I think that we're a pretty good example. We haven't made it yet. We aren't doing business together yet, but it's something that I hope to see in the near future. So one of the things that you really have to be prepared for is to be patient. Because for me, I'm absolutely going to get qualified, diverse suppliers in every bid that goes out the door at Allstate. But it's time, place, and circumstance. You have to be ready with the right skill, and the commodity or the service area needs to be up for bid. Allstate, like a lot of other corporations, we have long-term contracts. Unless there's a performance issue, we don't usually break them. There really has to be something seriously going wrong for us to move away from a contract. So you have to wait for the right time in the right place, and you have to be ready when that time comes. A good example that I can give you is just last week, I was at the WeBank West conference, and there was a woman-owned company that I've been meeting with for the past 3 years. And while I was at the conference, one of our buyers sent me a text that was the perfect fit for this particular supplier out of the blue, and that I was with her, just happened to be with her, was even more advantageous. So it's just, I never know. A lot of times people will ask me what's going out for bid next at Allstate. A lot of times I don't know. Sometimes I know things that are coming up in the next 18 months, but sometimes I'm surprised. Things that I think would not be going out for bid, again, because of performance issues or whatever else, suddenly come up for bid. So it's important that you do keep in touch, and keeping in touch the right way is really important. After the conference, and I hope you did keep good notes during the conference, because when I speak to people or when suppliers come to me, I always tell them when would be a good time to follow up. And when you do follow up, it's important that you remind me that I told you to call, and be really specific. A lot of times, if someone calls and says, we met at the conference, you said I should follow up. We meet a lot of people, and we go to a lot of different conferences, so I really put that burden on you as a potential business partner to, when you call, remind me, because just in case I do forget. And make sure you're right on point, and know what issues the corporation is facing or present solutions. If you're really interested in doing business with us, keep an eye on news feeds and see what's going on with Allstate. I had someone call me this morning that saw a press release on Esurance, which is a company backed by Allstate, and they wanted to know, they had a solution for call centers. They wanted to know if I could help get them in the door. What was great about that is I didn't know Esurance was sending out a bid for call centers. So it's important that you stay on top of the news too, especially if you're very interested in doing business with us. Another thing that I always suggest that people do is the NGLCC conference is great, but if you, let's say you're in Orlando, the next biggest conference of the year is the National Minority Supplier Development Conference. If you're in that area, you should go. You don't have to be a member of that organization to attend. So it's really advantageous to go to other groups and see what they're doing. And as a supplier, you can't exhibit at their event, but you certainly can attend. And beyond diversity events, some of the best ways that suppliers have gotten in the door with me is that they go to industry-specific events that where they will meet Allstate staff members who are in a particular area, be it IT or marketing and real estate, and it is extremely helpful when an Allstate staff member from a department outside of sourcing calls me and says, I met this supplier, I like them, let's see if we can get them in the door at Allstate. So industry-specific also is great. And then just in general, when you're meeting a corporate representative, beyond business today or in the future, always stop and ask the corporate representative, what else does your company offer in the way of mentoring or in-house trade shows? We happen to have both at Allstate. We have a mentoring program. We also have our own in-house trade show. And when we do announce those programs, we do tweet that out through NGLCC and the other organizations that we work with. But be aware of those. And then also ask for introductions to my corporate colleagues. We have a supplier that works with Allstate today that came to us through Prudential. My colleague at Prudential just happened to be sitting at a supplier at a luncheon at an event, and she told the Prudential rep, Beth Canning, I think a lot of you might know Beth, that she didn't have a product for Prudential, but she had something that she thought was spot on for Allstate. Beth came over, made that introduction, and now that particular supplier does a couple $2 million a year with Allstate. She came to us, she was spot on, she knew exactly where she would fit. She told me exactly what departments to go to in Allstate to present her information. She was one of the most prepared suppliers that I ever met, and today she's a key business partner. So, and all along, make sure you're asking questions about size and capacity, because I do have, and this happens a lot. This just happened last month to me. I have suppliers that have been calling me for about 5 years. An opportunity came up spot on for that it would be something that she had told me they could do. They got the bid, and then at the 11th hour, she called and said, we're not going to bid. It's not big enough for us. But it's, that's something you should have thought about before. Make sure you're willing to take those small bids to get in the door. I really think they made a mistake turning it down. And also, if you're going to go for something big, make sure that you really have the capacity to handle it, because very often when people see what the bid truly is or what our volume is going to be, they back off. So just make sure you have all those things. So those are my initial points. So I'll turn it over to David for some of his thoughts.
Okay. Yeah, I'd be happy to. And what I'm going to do is leverage a lot of the stuff that you just said in there, but give it to you, I guess, from the supplier perspective. And everything Margaret said is spot on, and it's really just a matter of understanding, I think, the relationship you either have with your supplier diversity representative or the one you want to develop from their point of view, so that really you can make a relationship that is going to stand the test of time. And that's really the first thing that Margaret said, that Margaret was talking about over there, is that you really need to have patience. When you're dealing with a company that has, tens of thousands of employees, sometimes over 100,000, and is, tens of billions in revenue, the opportunities are, the right opportunity for you may not be present the day you're talking to them or the first time you meet them or the second time. It can take years. So really you've got to kind of get into it, for the long haul and really understand that really you're developing a relationship where it's going to take time for you to develop the right personal relationship and also find the right opportunity for you and your company. So that is the one thing I would say. I've had that conversation as chair of supplier diversity for NGLCC NY with newly certified businesses many times, where they think it might be something that they can leverage right away. And odds are it's going to take you a long time to do. It does not mean it's not worthwhile to embark upon, but you really have to look at it from that long haul perspective. Another thing that, you really have to do, and again, Margaret, did touch upon all these things, is you meet somebody in supplier diversity at one of these shows, and maybe they introduce you to somebody else, but it's incumbent upon you as the supplier to really educate the contacts that you make about what it is that you do. We as a small business owner, mid-sized business owner, we live it and breathe it every single day, and it all makes perfectly good sense to us. But when you're dealing with, somebody, in supplier diversity or procurement, they can't possibly know what you do to your level of detail. And they're also, I would say they're generalists, generally speaking. They're dealing with hundreds of different types of suppliers in all lines of businesses, trying to procure and find vendors across a range that, Allstate or any other company might try to buy. And they might need a lot of, education about what you do, how you do it, and really how you can specifically fit into their company. The more help you give them in that area, the better off it is for you, and the better off it is for your supplier diversity contact. And I think Margaret gave some examples in there where, if you do your research on the company, you may know the department, maybe even the name of the person you've got to get to. And if you can go in there with that, maybe they know them or they know that somebody in that department and they can help make those connections. And really giving them that type of information may be, a really good way of going about it. Do as much research as you can to kind of make this process as easy as it is on your supplier diversity person. Speaking on Margaret's benefit here, Margaret's behalf here, she's inundated with calls and emails from so many people. The easier you can make her job, the better off it'll be. A couple of other things really around that. It's not just the connection that you want to make. Who should you be talking to, but really, I said this before. How do you fit in? Your business fit into Allstate or whatever company you're trying to work with. You have to know that industry fairly well, and you've got to do your research on it and know how that company is organized and exactly what they do. Make sure you know that you're dealing with a property and casualty insurer and not a health insurer, for instance. And even within P&C, there's lots of different types of insurance. You have to know who you're talking to, what their other lines of business that may leverage that core business that they've got, and really say, this is specifically what we can do. I think that example you gave from that woman that came over from Prudential, Margaret, was very important. She maybe she just guessed at it, but probably she did some research on Allstate and knew that this would be a good fit for what they're doing. And she said, this is what I want to do for you specifically. It's not just something general, hey, we're in IT, or we do marketing or creative or anything like that. It's really delivering that, a specific value that you can deliver to them and really how you're going to fit in with them. And the last thing that I'll say on this topic over here is really it's a small world. I'll start with that. And that's what Margaret was talking about before about, you can go to the NGLCC conference, and that's good. But if you can go to Orlando and be at the MSDC regional conference down there, or whatever WeBank has, or the ISM meetings that are held all over the country, and there's a lot of other opportunities as well. Go to as many of these as you can, because we live in a very virtual world right now. We're all on conference calls. Everybody's all around the globe, and you can talk to people on the phone. But really, kind of FaceTime is very, very important for establishing a relationship. And so the more you get to go and meet these people face to face, the more you're able to impress upon them who you are and what you do, and have kind of casual hallway conversations in addition to like the presentations that we want to set up. And that really goes a very long way. And you also have to remember that when you follow up with them, you want to follow up with them the right way. You don't want to badger anybody. Mm-hmm. Again, they're getting hundreds of calls, thousands of calls. You want to be polite and respectful. If you said, we'll follow up in 3 months, you follow up in 3 months. And like Margaret said, you say, we were going to follow up, and you jog her memory. You help her in that respect. But you don't want to get on anybody's, you don't want to get a reputation or get on anybody's bad side, because it is such a small world as well. Margaret knows a lot of her peers, and there's, she goes to these conferences and she sees them all the time. And I would bet that person that came from Prudential, although her idea didn't work at Prudential, she probably was not on the bad side of people from Prudential, because if she had come to Allstate and Margaret calls her peer at Prudential and Prudential says, oh, you don't want to work with them, they're a big pain in the neck, that would pretty much kill your relationship. So, you've got to remember, when you're talking to one person, you're really talking to a few dozen. Yeah. The word will get around. So.
Yes, and they might use less teleconference-friendly lingo than pain in the neck, too.
Yeah, that's true.
I was being polite.
Yeah, and David makes a really good point about most supplier diversity staff members are generalists. I was a buyer, but I was a buyer for the claim department. So that's the only area of purchasing I really understand. When someone comes to me with IT or data analytics or mobile apps when they became really popular and we really needed outside support for that at Allstate. It was really the suppliers who educated me. So be ready to really help somebody understand here's why I fit. And as David said, if you can come to me and say, I looked up various directories, here's the person at Allstate that would use my product or service, that gives me a beeline to go right after that person so that it can help me identify where you would be a good fit.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's great. There's a few things I kind of want to re-emphasize and flesh out from a staff perspective. It's really important that, as Margaret and David both mentioned, not badgering people. And it's really as simple as just asking, when you have your matchmaker or when you meet someone at a different context, to just ask them how often you should follow up with them. And people have different preferences, and they'll tell you if they prefer an email or if they want to call. I mean, I'd imagine the majority of the times they'd want emails. And, you can simply keep a spreadsheet that lets you know, this person wants to be contacted this often. It's also, when you do reach back out, it might be a good idea, Margaret said, to jog their memory. If there was, a joke that you shared or you talked about a specific thing, to help them remember you, because, they do meet hundreds of people. And it's also an opportunity, instead of, every time you follow up with them, you don't have to do a hard sell like, hey, they know why you're checking in. So you don't necessarily need to say, hey, I'm still interested in working with you, unless you're inquiring about a specific opportunity. One tactic that some of our suppliers employ, which is pretty simple but useful, is just if you're very interested in working with a company, to put up a Google News alert, so you can get updates if there's any new initiatives on that company. It'll come in, and if there's something that you think is relative to your business, or you think that you can help with that, that's kind of a good entree to follow up with them again and say, hey, I can see Allstate or, United Airlines or IBM is embarking on this project, and this actually fits in well with us. So that's a good way to show that you're kind of being knowledgeable and proactive. And in a way that would actually help the supplier diversity professional see where you fit in. We talked a little bit about understanding that supplier diversity professionals, they are generalists. They might, as Margaret has, have a background in some other place within the organization, but they're not necessarily specialists in what you're selling them. So it's really, really, really important to equip them so that they're able to, and they feel comfortable introducing you to the right person, that they know, you're the best for the job, and that they can they can feel comfortable and confident that, that connection can be made. So you might want to think about things like avoiding industry terms that are just really specific to your category. And this, it varies from industry to industry. We recently profiled Joel Caduccio of Specialized Pharma, one of our certified LGBTBEs, who does really, and to be honest, I don't really understand exactly what he does, but he does really kind of advanced genetic and pharmaceutical research. And he was able to successfully pursue a contract with Johnson & Johnson through their supplier diversity professional, the supplier diversity, Manny Diaz. So, Manny's not necessarily an expert in kind of the science of it, but he was able to talk to Manny in such a way that Manny was able to connect him with the proper people within the organization and, within the category. And that's when you can kind of really, talk shop and convince the team that you'll be working with that you're the best fit. So a couple of questions, and if anyone listening has any questions, feel free to let us know. There were a couple of things I also wanted to follow up on. So in terms of, and we talked a little bit about making sure that you're able to deliver, that you have the capacity. And Margaret and most of our supplier diversity people are pretty upfront in communicating, that you need to have a certain level of capacity to pursue, either a minimum of, this is our threshold for doing business with Allstate at all, and then this for particular contracts. Is there anything that suppliers should be proactively asking about that maybe you don't on a regular basis think to share in terms of, insurance requirements or their financing that's not kind of the part of the general spiel?
The insurance requirements really depend on what you're going to be doing. So they're all over the board. If you're going to be customer touching at Allstate, they're really high. But if you're just a writer that's going to do speeches for us, that's something at a whole different level. So asking the specifics about your category, it is always good to know. So that a lot of times I would know if a project's going to be big, and again, anything that's going to expose us to the public, then the requirements quadruple in what we're looking for. So we're really strong in that. I'm trying to think other things that people should ask. I mean, volume is a big one. I don't think that people really understand. Like if you're going to do like an educational program, really asking, well, how many classes, where around the country, and things of that nature. Because like any corporation, when we roll something out, we have the ability to bring a supplier down with our volume. And unfortunately, diverse and non-diverse, big and small companies, I have seen that happen to. The downside, if you're a smaller company, you don't have a team that you can send in to fix it. Larger companies do. And I've seen everybody fail. So it's really important to, the minute the bid gets out, or if you think you're going to be getting a bid, ask as many questions as you can to make sure you're really the right fit. And the worst you can do is if you are going to say, I'm not going to take it, and here's why, but remember me for the next time, do that as early as you can in the process.
Yeah.
And one of the things we had chatted about is, so in terms of effectively making connections and having the supplier diversity person connect you with the proper people within the company, sometimes the supplier diversity people will know and offer and say, I need to connect you with so-and-so. Sometimes they might not be, in addition to being confident that they should make the introduction, knowing exactly who you should be introduced to. So I think David mentioned it's good to have, if you have a specific name in mind, and one of the things that we talked about, Margaret, is the kind of research you can do. If you can go on LinkedIn, you can Google the company and find, speeches that were or articles written by certain staff. So those are important things to keep in mind, that you can, other ways of making the supplier diversity person's life a little bit easier.
Yeah, that's really important. That's very helpful to me. I had somebody not too long ago did that and said, listen, here, I heard one of your officers make a speech. Here's where I think I can add value. So that was an easy connection for me to make, and I didn't know the officer. So it was an introduction I had to make of myself first, but then also try to get the supplier in the door.
Absolutely. Does anyone else on the line have any questions for Margaret or David?
Well, this is Bob Glass from Blue Wave Solutions.
Hey, Bob.
Good afternoon, everybody. If I may, I'd sort of like to add on a little bit to what our two panelists have said, if that's all right.
Yep.
I agree with both of them that when you go to approach a company, that it's a relationship that you're building, not necessarily a sale. But I would encourage everybody that that's your expectation, but I think your presentation should be that of a sale. And the only reason I say that is that we attended both the Dallas and the Las Vegas convention, and we went in there in both conventions with the idea that, okay, we're going to be talking to really top players, part of the industry that in our field we could only dream to be prime contractor with, and so forth and so on. And that I told my sales staff that, okay, you need to start building relationships, but try to make the sale at the same time. So the end result of that is that within 7 or 8 months of the Dallas one, we landed one global Fortune 100 company, and then landed a Forbes Fortune 300 company. And at this last one, we actually met up with one of the top 3 communication companies in the United States. We presented to them at the matchmaker session, and before we left the convention, we signed a contract.
I'm sorry, was that in Dallas or Vegas?
Dallas, Vegas.
Okay.
So, and all I want to echo what they say. Don't expect that. We didn't expect it, but we presented like we did expect it and got it. So, it's just, it's how informative you are. We went through the boot camp in Dallas, and we go in knowing that the procurement officer has a huge task ahead of them, trying to figure out where you fit in a huge company. And it's really their job not to tell you, oh, we have this contract or we have this contract, although I know some procurement officers do that for us. But generally, as everybody says, they're generalists, so you're building up a relationship with them so that in turn you can build up relationships with those people who would normally hire you. And I would agree, they can take 1 or 2 years. I got one that's now we're on our second year, and we're getting deeper and deeper into the company, but we still haven't got any money out of them. So those are two extremes, one that's taken me 2 years and one that took me 2 days to actually get the contract signed. So there's that. And I would also encourage you to do some ancillary homework when you do this, because we sort of hit our head against the wall a couple of times in the sense that you really need to know, is the company I'm presenting to diverse? I mean, they're obviously supporting us because they're here, but you also need to know how they track the dollar spend with you, right? Do they actually track the LGBTBE dollar spend, or are they supporting the program in the NGLCC and us because of that? And they are our allies, but the procurement officer, if they don't track the LGBTBE spend, the procurement officer has a harder time than if they did. So if we were a women-owned business, they can put us in a category, but if we're an LGBTBE, they can't. So you have to prepare for that, and you have to help the procurement officer understand how unique and diverse that you are within the fact that they don't track that dollar. Now, the two companies we landed don't track the dollars, the gay spend dollars. That didn't prevent us from going in because we obviously paid the gay card because we were at the convention, but we never said anything after that. So it's just, and if you look, you look at people as the panelist said, you listen to somebody who gives a talk and everything else, you can get a sort of tone for the company. You can look at their score, their human rights score, and see where that fits and everything else. So, but I encourage you, the most I would encourage you to do is make sure that you expect nothing but go in and present like they're going to sign the contract tomorrow. Because in our case, it actually happened.
That is good.
Mm-hmm.
And as to the tracking of LGBT, another thing to do is if you are at a conference that is not presented by NGLCC, let's say you go to NMSCC, there's a lot of corporations that don't include or count NGLCC as, but you can ask them. Because that's how Allstate got started with the inclusion of the LGBT community. We were at another event. Someone came up to our booth and asked us about the inclusion of LGBT. We weren't at that point, but we started because they planted the seed. So I think that that's a really good thing that you can do for the organization, too. Remind them that you're out there with qualified suppliers ready to compete for business.
Mm-hmm. Right. Exactly. That's a good, and I would just kind of leverage that. I think that's a good example, Margaret, of how you can really help give a voice to our community, to corporate America at large. Because there are companies that don't do it, but there are people within that are trying to start it. Some that don't really know other companies are even doing it. And really, it's just a matter of kind of getting out there, and that's a broader, perhaps social aim than just dealing, with supplier diversity and being an LGBTBE, strictly speaking. But it's a good thing in general. So.
Yeah, and we actually. And kind of another point I wanted to bring up, which we had touched on earlier, is obviously everyone wants contracts and they want business opportunities, but for a lot of the corporations that we work with and for a lot of their supplier diversity teams, so we do a regular corporate partner survey, and 20% of our corporate partners said that their prime goal in supplier diversity is actually supplier development. So not just increasing their spend, but actually helping diverse suppliers grow and be successful and get contracts with them or with other corporations, over the long term. And that's kind of, the name of the game of supplier diversity, is ensuring that, everyone is able to grow to scale and is able to get a seat at the table. So to that end, we talked a little bit about in-house mentoring programs, which a lot of our corporate partners have, that a lot of our LGBTBEs have participated in. So that's something you might also want to inquire about during your conversations and, do research on your own. We actually had, I don't know, is Jeffrey from Shimmer Events on the call by any chance? I think he's traveling out of the country. Jeffrey actually learned TD Bank has a mentoring program for suppliers, which he learned about at the conference and is now participating in. Now, actually, I think it started September 5th. So you want to make sure you're looking holistically at those opportunities because, the supply diversity person is someone who's an advocate for you in many respects.
This is Dan Trost with U.S. Marketplace, and I have a question for Margaret Clinsport. We recently met by phone, and I gave you a specific person that would be a good contact for the services I provide. And since that time, I've done an outside project for Allstate Workplace Benefits, and it's been very successful. And my question to you is not only for Allstate, but for any diversity buyer. When we have a successful project that may be related to your company, would you like a quick overview of that by email?
Oh, no, that would be great. Yeah, anytime you can give me a story that I can tell and say, we've got a supplier who's been performing, that would be excellent.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I'll send you one.
Yeah, no, that would be very good. Thanks.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important point, and it just goes back to, being mindful of when you do your touch bases or your check-ins, that you're being mindful with the timeliness of it, not being too often, but that if you're able to give it some kind of hook that's useful to the supplier diversity professional, that's not just, I want your business, but something that's actually helping to equip them. So that's a really good example. And news about successes that you had or projects that you've worked on, or expand if you've just expanded your scope in general, if you've added new capabilities, if you've added staff, those are things, if it's significant changes, those are things that might, make you stand out and again, help equip your advocates within that organization.
And what happens with a lot of those stories is I will frequently share them with our corporate relations staff for our internal newsletter or our annual corporate social responsibility report, which is public. And that helps me to educate people internally on what supplier diversity is and what my role is because, in a large company, there are many people today. I mean, I hope we've improved over the years through all the communications, but when I first started in this role, if you ask the average staff member, what's supplier diversity and does Allstate have a program, they would have told you, I don't know, and we probably don't have a program. So that really helps me internally.
Right. And I can say something on that, too. You'd be surprised, when you're a supplier and you talk to all these different companies, they run the gamut of being very sophisticated where they do a good job of internal training and say this is, why we have these efforts and it's part of a broader D&I, diversity and inclusion, type of, program that they're establishing. And there are some where there's the supplier diversity person is, the department's really a person, and their job is mostly to just go department by department trying to get buy-in and educating them about why the company wants to do it. It's a lot less systemic, and you'll find these two different companies are in very different places in terms of what they're trying to do, what their goals and accomplishments are for the upcoming year, and so you have to be mindful of that type of landscape. I think when you're talking to a particular supplier diversity person, so see how they're plugged into the organization and what they're trying to do. So. Sometimes they have their own battles that have nothing to do with procurement or getting vendors into the supply chain. Yeah.
Yeah, that's very true. The chief procurement officer that I have today, Cheryl Harris, is one of the best people that I've ever worked for at Allstate. She's fantastic. Our prior chief procurement officer was supportive but didn't want to be involved and felt that, if I couldn't push the issues forward and get suppliers in the door, that was on my shoulders. So it's great when you have an internal ally. And I know, I've lived in both environments, one where I didn't have support and one where I had tremendous support. So it does make a big difference on what the supplier diversity staff is able to do.
Mm-hmm.
Who, Dylan? Yeah, he went with Grammy to the Lego store, remember? Yeah. He went to the Lego store. Okay.
Legos are good. Okay.
Like,
All right.
they're always good.
Ooh.
Did anyone else have any questions for Margaret or David? Okay, awesome. Well, thank you again, Margaret and David, for participating. It was a lot of really great information. We do record this call, so we'll eventually post it on the website if any of you just want to re-listen and just reabsorb all of the wonderful knowledge shared. But also, if you know anyone who is not able to join who's interested, we'll have that up on the web. And if you have any other questions, you can always contact me, and I can provide you with information or direct you to the right source. So thank you again for all of our participants. Thank you again to those for some of our international registered suppliers who joined us from outside the U.S. And stay tuned for our next teleconference, which will be coming up September 30th. That will be on the utilization of social media and especially LinkedIn for business development.